ignite their inherent sense of goodness. Today, we are shifting with Theo McCall, who is not only the chaplain at St. Peter's College in Adelaide for the past 14 years, he also happens to be the brother of my good friend, Alexandra, as well as a husband and father of three. In researching for today, I learned that St. Peter's College is an independent Anglican primary and secondary day and boarding school for boys, founded in 1847 by members of the Anglican Church of Australia. Thanks for joining me today, Theo.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Excellent. So, as you know, shifting is focused in the transformation and change genre within a framework focusing on the physical, the metaphysical, and the world of work.
Hmm.
And while it's clear that you take very good care of yourself physically, um, and it likely adds to your balance, I'm so interested today to speak with you about the metaphysical because that's really where you're the expert.
Sure.
Specifically, in your words, spirituality for the postmodern world. And this fascinating for me. I'm just so excited. So
Yeah.
clearly this is also your world of work. And you
Yes.
may have insights into how your congregants' work impacts their metaphysical journeys, which I think is going to be really interesting. And before we get going, I like to play a little game with my guests
Yes.
because it helps to break the ice a bit while also delivering some interesting content. I never know what people are going to say in response to what's your current first world problem? Do you need some help to get in the spirit? I'll tell you mine. Do you want me to go
Yeah.
first?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
You go first. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, at the moment, the city is repairing or adding functionality to the electrical system. And I get a notification that my electricity is going to be spotty at best over a few days next week, which, first you're kind of annoyed, aren't you? You're thinking about
Yeah.
the food in your freezer. How am I going to do my Zoom call with my next person? But at the same time, it made me just really grateful for the fact that 9 out of 10, well, really 10 out of 10, right? 9.9 out of 10, you flip the switch and the electricity's there.
Yeah.
And it's like, yay. So that's my current first world wine. And what's yours?
Yeah. My current one is I have this work laptop that it's an Apple and it has a little plug where you can attach attachments. And it's an Apple specific plug, so you have to get an adapter. So
Hmm.
that's annoying for one, but now one of the plugs stopped working a while ago, and the guys here repaired it. But now it's stopped working again, so I have to choose between reliable internet, because the Wi-Fi in my office is not very reliable, or being able to attach my bigger monitor. So I have to make a choice between the two, and it's really annoying.
No, that's sort of a rock hard place choice, or what do they call it? Hobson's choice. None of it is really all that good. You don't have full functionality.
Yeah.
Um, so today you chose internet, I'm guessing.
Well, I did, and I'm just hoping it holds for the entire time that we're on. Otherwise, I'll be, yeah,
Well,
making some
perhaps
hard
you
decisions.
sent a prayer up to your boss
Yeah, that's
about
right.
that. All right, excellent. Well, I appreciate that that would be very frustrating, but glad you picked the internet for today.
Yeah,
So that's fun. And you are free to use that game with other people if you
thank
so
you.
choose. You're welcome. So we've already shared that you are a married man and you have a family. And it might be beneficial, not just for me, but for our listeners, to illustrate how the Anglican Church differs from other religious frameworks. So, can
Yeah.
you walk us through the differences to other frameworks and the benefits of following the Anglican way? And maybe perhaps touching a little bit on what drew you to the vocation.
Yeah. Well, I was born into this tradition, but the older I've got, the more it gels with me. I like the intellectual curiosity that's part of Anglicanism. There's a freedom to express ideas, and which is what I do here at the school too. And some of the staff who are not necessarily Christians themselves, but they have to come to chapel because they're rostered on. And a number of them have said to me, I really enjoy the way that you just get us to think and challenge us intellectually and keep it up, basically.
Good
So,
compliment.
so I think that's a real strength, and it's quite a facet of Anglican Christianity, I think, and it's what's
Mhm.
kept me in the tradition too, as opposed to perhaps, not being or going off somewhere else. Yeah,
Would you say that's very different to other religious frameworks?
it's different to a lot. Yeah, the Uniting Church is similar in Australia, but some of the other traditions, although they encourage an intellectual approach, can be more dogmatic in what they require their particularly their ministers to sign up to.
It'd be very constraining, couldn't it? I mean, as a congregant, you know, I guess you could ask for forgiveness for whatever
Yeah,
belief
that's right.
is not in alignment. But if you're up there leading the pack,
Yeah,
then you need to be in alignment with the overall organization.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite. And you can see why that's the case, but some traditions really are quite hard line on it with their leaders.
Yes, I agree. And you say you were born into it, and I'm aware I did have the pleasure of meeting your dad, who was a
Mm.
bishop. Is that, do I have that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
but looking back, he always got us. My parents always got us to think about what we were saying and believing. So it started when I was quite young, really. Yeah,
I'm sure be mindful of our words as they have such an impact.
yeah.
Yeah, and he was a lovely man, and I was sad to hear of his passing. So
Thank you.
I'm sure
Yeah,
you miss him.
yeah, yeah. 3 years ago now, and there's still some things I wish I'd asked him or got to talk to him about, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Will you share one of those that you wish you brought up before you couldn't?
Oh, let's have a think. I can't think of anything right off the bat, but I'll ponder that while we
Understood.
chat.
Okay. All right. You come back to me. So, it's interesting you bring up the intellectual inquisitiveness of the Anglican structure, because
Yeah.
my parents sent me and my siblings to a Jesuit school to avoid our being bused to inner city Detroit in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
Because they wanted to integrate the schools, and I'm sure you're well aware of that. And so I could have hopped two fences and been at the public school, but they were like, nope, you're going to go for 45 minutes on a bus. And my parents said, I don't think so. So we ended up going to the Catholic school a couple blocks away. I mentioned this because it was sort of my gateway into spirituality.
Yeah.
But I was there between the ages of 5 and 12. I got stuck on the stories that we were told that to me made little to no logical sense. I'm a
Yes.
very logical person from birth, and it made me quite difficult to be a true follower. So, and also the Jesuits are also very well focused on education, but to your point that you've already made, it is a sect of Catholicism, and
Mm.
it tamps down on what I see as the natural human self by removing any opportunity for intimacy between two people.
Yes.
And more recently, I've incorporated yoga and meditation in my life, and that's my spiritual foundation for living in spirit, as you say,
Yeah.
and bolstering a positive psychology. Actually, it wasn't living in spirit that you said; it was St. Paul, wasn't it?
Yeah. 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 That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and it appears you've co-authored a book about the topic. Is that right? Can you tell the listeners, well, and me, the link you forged between the living in spirit and
Mm.
positive education? I'm really curious.
Yeah. Yeah. This book, being called, and it has the subtitle Scientific, Secular, and Sacred Perspective. So it came out in 2015. It was really the brainchild of Martin Seligman, the one of the founders of positive psychology. And I had the pleasure of going to a conference with him just over 10 years ago. And there were all sorts of different, wide variety of people there, some psychologists, some people like me, a couple of chaplains and spiritual people. And we just had this great conference talking about the links between positive psychology and some of the older traditions. So I then ended up on the editorial team for this composition of what we talked about essentially. And
Oh,
there seems so many overlaps particularly between the strengths, the VIA strengths, character strengths questionnaire that you can do, and some of this
what was
sort of
that again? VIA? Is that what you said?
yeah, yeah,
What's that?
VIA character strength. So it's out of the University of Pennsylvania, and it it kind of gets you to answer a questionnaire. It's a personality type questionnaire, but it's quite interesting because a lot of the what they call character strengths link with religious virtues, if you like.
Do
So there's
tell.
yeah, so there's a huge overlap, and it's quite revealing. So my one number one character strength, which was quite gratifying, was spirituality. Yeah.
Took the right
So that was a
vocation. Well
big.
done.
And then perseverance and teamwork were a couple of my other ones. So yeah, it's these all these sort of Aristotelian virtues that they can now have link into a personality test. So it's fascinating.
It's fascinating. And so what, like integrity would
Yeah.
be one.
Yeah.
What are the, but is integrity stemming directly from religion?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I don't know that it necessarily is, but it has a close link with religion. And I think when religion goes awry, it's when the integrity of the practitioners is compromised. Certainly.
Well, we have some people who live quite well because they claim that they are a church and they don't pay taxes, and then
Yeah.
they have a house that's bigger than my neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
not, I don't really see the integrity blending in there. But that's not you. That's not your story. Um, so when you say positive psychology linking to living in spirit, you're saying that we've learned that the tenements put forth by perhaps the Anglican Church and others
Yeah.
result, if enacted, they result in a positive mindset.
Yeah, I think they do, and this has been one of the really interesting debates within Christianity is this tension between the sort of more hardline religions, which say we're all sinners, basically.
It's so fun.
Yeah, exactly. And we would be on the cross ourselves were it not for Jesus. Between that sort of approach and one that I favor, which is much more along the lines of building on the inherent decency that human beings have, or that 99% of human beings have.
You believe there's inherent decency.
Yeah, I do, and sometimes it gets lost, of course, which is the
Mm.
tragedy. And of course, and there are always the people who have particular personality disorders who in extreme cases. But for the rest of us, there's an inherent kindness, I think, that comes out.
Do generally want to help, I think, and
Yeah, yeah,
contribute. I do find that when I go to work, because I work in change and transformation, people get flustered and anxious if they don't know what their role is.
yes, yeah, indeed,
Yes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I see what you're saying. And
Is
I
it
was actually
lovely?
thinking, oh yeah?
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I think it was. Is it Janet Mead, who was an anthropologist? She was once asked apparently what the first sign of civilization was, and she said it was the evidence of a broken femur, so a broken leg, which had healed. And of course, if you don't have people supporting you in the wild, as it were, or pre-civilization, there's no way you would survive a broken leg. So
No, and I thought it was actually, sorry, we're
yeah,
leaving you.
yeah, that's right.
Animals do that, don't they? You're no good anymore, so
Yeah,
we're out.
we're out.
I
Yeah.
think there might be some civilizations left on the planet that still function that way.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I saw this interview, and I'm going to mention makeup of the two parties because it's, I think, relevant. There was a Caucasian male interviewer
Hmm.
and a Chinese female interviewee, and they were discussing whether humans are inherently good or bad.
Hmm.
He was from North America, and she, as previously stated, was from China. He thought people are generally good.
Yep.
She thought, no, people are
Wow.
generally bad.
Wow.
It was eye-opening. That was a very interesting conversation, but I'm digressing a little bit. But I found that compelling. So I think I agree with you, and I would say that most people that I come into touch with exhibit that. They
Yes.
exhibit that truth, right? So
Yes.
yay,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah. Yeah.
heavens.
Exactly.
is there a way to ignite that in others? If they're having a bad day and that's not coming out, then how do you ignite their inherent sense of goodness?
Yeah, well, that's the real trick, isn't it? I think positive and generous attitude goes a long way. A kindness, and that's the only way really to do it. I think, and sometimes you'll hit a brick wall, but sometimes you won't.
Right. Do you ever find it difficult to be kind?
Oh, absolutely. And my weakness is just I'm physically or emotionally attacked directly myself. That's when I will struggle. I'm quite forgiving when I see other people hurt or doing the wrong thing. But if I've been physically or emotionally attacked directly myself, that's when I struggle. Yeah.
Interesting. If you have that space, then you can function within your window of tolerance.
Yes.
But if it's a direct impact, you need to reach for the window.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Understood. And Joanna, who was that woman who played the actress who plays in Ab Fab, the
Oh,
British
yes.
woman?
Yes.
Lumley, that's her name,
Lovely.
Joanna
Yeah.
Lumley. And there was this nice quote that someone shared with me the other day, and it was about the thing you have to do. And this is Joanna Lumley, and I'm going to murder the quote, so forgive me, Joanna. The thing you have to do is approach everyone and everything with "I love you," for real. Like you love everyone, and if you go that way, they're
Yes.
going to come back at you that way too. And then if they don't, those are the ones that you move aside.
Yeah.
Joanna, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I'm sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I agree with her. That's amazing.
Yeah, she's pretty good. Which have you seen the Netflix documentary? It was kind of like a conversation that was filmed. It was called Joy, Finding Happiness in Troubled Times. Did you
No,
see
I
that?
didn't.
Oh, well, it's with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, who apparently had been, though they didn't get together physically much over the years, they're like deep friends, and you could
Yes.
tell that there was a lot of joy there. But I think it's based on a book that they collaborated together with author Douglas Abrams of a similar title.
Yes.
Uh, so this, it made me start thinking it was really lovely. It's like 90 minutes, and I sat there and I mean, the Dalai Lama is always giggling. There's, he's just like is joy.
Yes. Yes.
And it was quite nice to see those men who have faced a lot of adversity for their
Yes.
beliefs, and we all know about them now, and they're both in a state of peace, kind of, but physical ailment for Desmond Tutu. Obviously, that was a little while ago. But I was thinking that the concept of joy and living in joy can be quite elusive for so many. They let the red light or the flat tire or something just dissipate the joy.
Yes.
And how might we, and this is a question for you because
Mm.
you're a leader in this field, how might we all begin to incorporate a joy point of view on a daily and moment to moment basis? How do you do that?
Yeah, so it's a great book, that one. I haven't seen the series, but I've read the book. I actually bought it as a gift for someone else, and then he left before I could give it to him, so I kept the book. I got to
This
chase
thing
him
called
up.
the post office.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of this thing. I thought it's great, but and they identify a number of pillars of joy, the two of them, and they're such lovely. They come across as lovely people. In fact, I've met a couple. There's a couple of staff members here at school who are South African, and they met Desmond Tutu when he was still alive, and they said he was just
Wow.
extraordinary. Um, he
Yeah.
he's been described as being so out there as a character that he encourages the best out of other people because he just loves being who he is. So I think maybe that's the way forward with joy is just embrace who you are and literally rejoice in it because I think he did that.
Fly your freak flag proudly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like that. And it's function from your lead by example.
Yes.
Lead by example? Does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. Lead by example. And have a great sense of humor uh, with it. And it's interesting. The two of them identify these other qualities. So they list eight actually. Humor is one of them. Humility, not surprisingly, another. perspective. I think that's helpful, especially when you come up against those hard people.
Well, what do you mean by that? How does perspective come into play when you come up against a severe pragmatist, perhaps is a good way to describe?
Because you kind of you get a perspective on, you get a bead, if you like, to use a term that Americans love, a good bead on who the person is, and you see them. And so some pragmatists, you kind of know what you're going to get, and maybe that helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, if I'm going to maybe bring this back to the world of work, I come up against some challenges when I need to present, are we making any progress in change to these pragmatic leaders who like to see numbers and
Yeah,
percentages and it's a really tough space to give numbers and percentages whether change is happening.
yeah, yeah,
So they like the
absolutely. Yeah,
data.
yes, yeah, yeah, that's right. Driven by it, and then
Do we
they list
have
a few
joy
others.
data?
Do I enjoy data?
Do we have joy data?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I we that's probably an area that we haven't tried to measure as much as we should. Is joy or happiness? Yeah. It, I'm sure it's possible, but it's tricky to measure, I would have thought. Yeah.
Well, it's subjective.
Yes, exactly. It's a bit like trying to define beauty or something. It's
Yes. Well, and then it takes us back to that first world problem situation because of your perspective,
yes.
uh, you know, maybe being without electricity or having spotty electricity is someone's reality.
Yeah, yeah,
If the light
precisely.
goes on, it's time to rejoice.
Exactly.
Could totally be like that. So you read the book because your
Yeah.
friend didn't take it,
Yeah, so I read the
right?
book. So there's a few other things: acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit, and compassion, and then generosity, which is an interesting one too. Generosity.
Spirit. I think
Yes.
that's kind of what we were talking about. For some reason, generosity got all tied up with money,
Yeah.
and I disagree with that's the only equation.
Yeah.
How else can we define or what are the aspects of generosity?
Yeah. I think the old phrase of generous heart, but generosity of spirit is probably the best way of defining it. I agree. Yeah, and it links with humor too. Never
Yes.
never trust someone who doesn't laugh. I struggle with people who have no humor. Yeah.
Same. And also finding that common thread of humor
Yes. Yeah, that can be
because we all yes, very tricky. What I might find funny, I must be careful with who I share it with. Test the waters a little bit first. But I
yeah.
agree, it's suspicious if someone's not prone to laughter and kind of at themselves, because that
Mm.
circles back to that humility piece.
Yes.
If you can't understand that you're human and have foibles,
Yes.
then you're not a lot of fun to be around, are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Laughing at yourself is really important. There's a couple of comedians, I won't name them because I don't want to get sued, but who
Good idea.
take delight in insulting other people, and they're quite funny, but somehow they don't have that ability to laugh at themselves. They're oddly humorless, even as they're cracking jokes at other people's expense.
I hear you. And then what about the old roasts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Dean Martin roasting people or Don Rickles. I remember the
Mm.
roasts, and it was all supposed friends getting
Yeah.
up, trying to just and here's your laundry
Yeah. Yeah.
for everybody. I've never understood that. So I think we're on the same page. I
Yeah.
think so. I think they're still doing those. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they are, and it just grates a bit with me. The one comedian I really do like is Steve Carell, and I think it's one of your people, of course. And maybe it's because he has a gentle sense of humor. He's just that, and he's got a sweet voice, and yeah,
Well, he's very pleasant looking as well,
yes, yes,
right? He's pleasant looking. He's not ooh or off-putting. He's nice, you know?
yeah,
And he has that there's a certain sense of humility now. We don't know him. He may be very different than he projects, but I think that's this kind of humor. He's not taking himself seriously, so therefore the whole thing is just like gentle poking of fun, which is
Fun. Yes.
nice.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
So we were talking a little bit about, well, I mentioned that I've incorporated yoga and meditation,
Hmm.
which equates to the in time on the Healthy Mind Platter. Which, if anybody's read the articles that I've written, then you know what I'm talking about. There's like 7 components on the Healthy Mind Platter that help balance an individual so that we are capable of functioning within our window of tolerance.
Yes.
And the in time on there, I needed that defined because it was interesting phrase to use, but it was because they didn't want to ascribe to any one channel for the in time.
Yes.
So to me, it aligns directly with prayer. And so many friends have said to me, I can't meditate. I keep thinking.
Yeah.
And people are very confronted by meditation. And I've never thought that the point was to not think,
Yeah.
um, but more that we become compassionate observers of our thoughts and
Yes.
remain in that observational space that you were talking about for a
Mm.
period of time so that we breathing deeply and we're incorporating humming or chanting to engage the nervous system. It's a search for like enabling a sustainable sense of peace
Yes.
because you have that, it carries on after the 20 minutes or the hour that you do it. And I'm
Mm.
wondering what your thoughts are on the two. Are they same? Are they different? And what are the perceptions of prayer and meditation and what do we do to shift it?
Yeah, I think they're very, very close. I kind of do a hybrid version of them, I think. So I do a bit of
Mm-hmm.
most mornings I do a bit of journaling, maybe read a bit of scripture and then kind of ask, okay, what's the one kernel of an idea that this particular passage might say to me? And then I just enter this sort of meditative slash prayer time and it's a combination really. And I think whatever works for people works. I've only done a few yoga classes, but the ones I've done I've found incredibly helpful. To the extent I really need to get organized and find a local. I've always done them when I've been on holidays, in some resort. So
Oh,
I need to find a local one and go to that.
no yoga at the school?
We've done it a little bit occasionally amongst staff, not regularly. So that maybe that'll be my suggestion box contribution.
Then you can join the class.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's
Yeah,
the crossover right there is the the yoga moves and then the quiet time that's part of it too.
yes. It's you can get some in time while doing yoga, and that was the foundation of it, obviously. Well, and also using your spine
Yes.
and making the
Yeah.
energy flow so that you're not stuck. To me, though, I think is there some confusion in the populace that prayer is sort of a customer service channel?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think there is that confusion and then when people, when they don't get the response they want, they say, well, obviously it doesn't work. And to me, it's much more, and I don't use this phrase lightly, but it's much more of a mystery prayer to me. And you can pray for someone and that's good but we don't kind of there's no way of measuring it that we've at least that we've discovered.
Well,
Yeah.
is that accurate?
Oh yeah.
Or can we look at the prayer groups that for patients of cancer where the patient has gotten better
Yeah, that's
because of
true.
the
Yeah.
prayer groups?
Yeah.
I mean, it is difficult to parse out. Well, was it the chemo? Was it your personality? Was it the location of the cancer? Was it the prayer?
Yeah, that's true. There is that anecdotal evidence. That's true. Yeah. And I actually had an experience in a very minor way of this. I had asthma as a teenager.
Hmm.
Um, and then I got some chiropractic help, but also a whole lot of prayer went into it as well. And pretty much, and it cured me. And there's some really interesting sort of overlap, and the yoga, of course, is linked to that with the spine stuff. So yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Well, the spinal column, if I may digress for just one moment away from our topic here, but the spinal column is where all the chakras are,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so if your chakras are imbalanced or blocked up, you may have pain, first of
yes,
all,
yes,
and also you are blocked in some way, right?
Yeah.
Like, say, the throat chakra, you stand up to speak in front of an audience and you can't
Yeah.
because you haven't cleared something out. And as I've been focused on clearing, similar to you, you had asthma, I used to have allergies.
Yes.
And so clearing those chakras and then also listening to a certain frequency
Wow.
has cleared my allergies. So there's a lot of things that we can explore that may sound a little confusing or outlandish to people, but I've had success and so have you. So
Yes. Yes.
that's why the show. Let's shift.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Um, well, no, fascinating. Yeah.
It is. And you brought up um the notion from people that if it doesn't work, then is God not listening? Is God evil and not nice to me? And and it brought me back to this notion in my childhood that didn't quite sit well with me, that God loves us and then
Yeah.
seemingly punishes us in a rather whimsical way.
Yeah.
And that just completely eroded my ability to trust in this idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you help your congregation and specifically the young men at St. Peter's reconcile the suffering that they see or perhaps go through with the ideal that God loves and supports us? Do you find that to be a question that people have?
Yeah, I do, and the suffering question is really hard. I think the first thing to say is there are no easy answers, and that's a really important thing to say. Um, Sometimes people genuinely discover God in the suffering or alongside the suffering, maybe. And
How's that?
you don't want to be too glib or about that, but some people do have that experience. One of my theologians, he just died this year, actually, quite recently. Jürgen Moltmann, he was a German. He talks about God discovering him in prisoner of war camp at the end of the Second World War, and in spite of all this sort of suffering that he was undergoing and the horrible stories he was hearing from his own native Germany, God found him, I think, is what he said. So yeah.
Was there a revelation? Was there an instance of something, an activity? Was it
Apparently,
Gabriel who came and gave a message? Does
there was nothing
Gabriel not
like,
work anymore? Was it only in the olden days? Where is Gabriel these days?
oh yeah, I'd love Gabriel to give me a visit and
I
answer a few
bet.
specific questions. No, he didn't have a big religious experience. Some people do, of course, but he was just walking around the camp, in between the barbed wire fences, and he said gradually he just had this experience of God being with him. And then he went back after he was released several years after the end of the war, because I didn't realize this, but several Germans spent several years like in as prisoners of war. So he wasn't released until 1948. But he went home and started writing theology, and it was obviously good for him because he lived to be 98 or something. So
Wow. Okay. See, now I'm back to you're saying that you were led to your vocation by your dad. Was there not also something similar to what you've just described that went on for you?
yeah, there's a few occasions. The one that I remember, there were two I remember quite clearly. One was very simple. I was playing soccer here at school because I'm an old scholar of the school I ended up at, which is poetic. I was about 16, I suppose, and one of my fellow students playing soccer with me said to me, "Well, you're going to become a priest, aren't you?" And I thought, "Oh, yeah, I maybe I will." So so that was interesting. Just someone else saying this comment and it ringing
Having your
true.
dad.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's why he made it, but it actually rang true for me. And then later, several
Okay.
years at university, I just had this real experience of God's presence or the presence of the Spirit with me. I didn't see anything, but I just had this real sense of someone being with me. Yeah.
Can you describe that feeling?
It was just a feeling of I wasn't alone, and I didn't see any ghosts or anything like that, but just a feeling of presence alongside me, supporting me. Yeah. And
And you
and some
thought, God.
yeah, so in my tradition, God, and some of the mystics talk about presence as that's one of the helpful words for them. Yeah.
I love that. And what about I'm going to take this to like sort of a side topic. Many people, when meditating, will report visits from loved ones who have passed on.
Yeah, the guy who supervised my PhD, who has himself passed on now, Dennis Edwards, great Catholic, great theologian. Probably I rank him as Australia's best theologian, Dennis Edwards. But when I was meeting with him to do my PhD, he said that he's had a vision of his mother, quite a profound visual experience. And yeah, amazing.
It is. And so I was wondering if you said this is God next to me.
Yeah,
Is it possible that it was when you were at university,
yeah.
that it was a family member looking out for you, but you think it was
Oh, that's
God?
definitely possible. There was and there's a lot of thoughts about angels too,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating field in itself. Are they just visitors from the future who have discovered time travel?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't have the expertise to go in that direction, but
Neither do I, but I definitely have the interest.
yeah, yeah, like, or are they these spiritual beings of some sort, maybe loved ones from you know, my grandmother or something like that? So yeah.
Hmm. I just wonder, recycle, reuse, so reincarnation, and then
Yeah.
and then while you're waiting for that, you just amuse yourself by going and helping the people that you used to know. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Nick, can we touch briefly on dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Dinosaurs
what
are
do
one
you?
of my passions, by the way.
What's that? Dinosaurs.
Yeah, yeah. I'm fascinated by them. I don't, not from a scientific point of view so much, but just because I just think they're amazing. Yeah.
Well, does that not fly in the face of the theory of creation? I mean,
Yeah.
how do we reconcile the dinosaur bones with the Garden of Eden and
Yeah.
the 7 days of let there be light and stuff?
Yeah, I
How do
think
we?
that's something I enjoy exploring with my year 11 students when I teach them. And I try to say to them, look, the Garden of Eden is a wonderful story and it has a lot of truth in it, but it's not historically or scientifically true. It's a different kind of truth. It's a truth about relationships, primarily.
What do you mean?
Our relationships. So it's about the story of Adam and Eve is about the loss of intimacy with God, a kind of a loss of friendship, really. And so it's a
Hmm.
story that tries to say to us through the ages that we've lost that intimacy with the divine or the transcendent, and we've become
Hmm.
focused on ourselves, which is what Adam and Eve do in the story. So that's where the truth is, I think. And then whereas the dinosaurs are these extraordinary creatures from millions of years ago that were there along with our mammal ancestors, but they didn't survive and we did. So yeah.
Am I understanding that from what you've said that the Garden of Eden is a parable?
Oh yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Yeah. Yeah.
And so in that parable, the way I remember it, and I haven't read it for a little while,
Yeah.
um, was God duplicitous in his relationship with Adam and Eve?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Was he duplicitous? Was he testing them? Is the other
And is that love? And is that a supportive relationship? And do I really want to hang out with someone like that?
Yeah, and I think that's the question to ask. Was it an unkind test? But if we ask that question, does that push the parable further than it can be pushed? But it's a great story because it's a story of a friendship lost. There's a really wonderful image of when they eat the apple and then they go and hide and then they hear the sound of God walking in at the nighttime, the time of the evening breeze, and they're hiding from him. And it's this really sort of earthy image of God looking for them and them hiding. It's
Hunting, stalking, or just trying to
yeah.
find them? And then I'm curious if you know this other story that I've become aware of that Adam was married before he was married to Eve, to Eve's sister, who's named Lilith.
Mm.
And the story that I'm aware of is that Lilith did not enjoy the traditional role for woman that was outlined by Adam and
Yeah.
God
Yep.
for her, and she went on her own journey. That whole story, that whole bit, and her whole take on everything has been all but erased. I bring her up in other with people, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm curious what you know about. Do you know about Lilith, and is this news to you?
No, this is news to me. I don't know anything about Lilith, so this is amazing, and it's a really interesting story that you've described because it kind of fits with a notion of equality that I think is actually in the Bible, but not in that particular story with Adam and Eve, though. And I've done quite a lot of reading of history of Judaism and Christianity, and this notion that equality is found in those two religions more than anywhere else, and that in the West at least, our notions of fairness and equality have a lot to do with our Judeo-Christian history, because of
When you
this.
say equality,
Yeah,
what equality are you referring to?
yeah. I was thinking specifically of men and women. So the New Testament texts that talk about equality are interesting because they put them on men and women on an equal footing in some of them, not all of them. Um,
Because there's a lot of people who like to quote things from the Bible that to them means woman is property, woman is second, and woman shall
yes,
be quiet. So I'm not
yeah,
seeing the equality in those passages.
yeah. That's true. There are those passages. That is true, and we can't run away from them. But there are passages in Galatians, for example, that describe male and female as equal and being in this together. So it's interesting. And the other fascinating fact is that the first Christians seem to, in the Book of Acts, this comes out, seem to have a place for women as leaders and people who supported the ministry of the others. So,
Is that not the Old Testament?
oh no, I was thinking of the New Testament where there's this.
Exodus? I'm sorry. I thought that was okay, I'm wrong. You would be right.
Yeah, oh well, it could well be in the Old Testament as well. It could well be in the Old Testament as well.
I'm aware that Lilith is a common name in Jewish culture.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And I believe many Jewish people would say, yes, I'm familiar with the story of Lilith.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
It
Yeah.
is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So that's part of their tradition that's been lost in translation with Christianity. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yes, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. And I'm not surprised that you're unaware of it
Mm.
because, like I say, she's been just erased.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's really important to rediscover these because there are other texts within Christianity in the New Testament that are equally radical in terms of the equality. And it's really important to rediscover these stories. So Lilith is obviously one we need to rediscover. Yeah.
like to because I think there's a bit too heavy of reliance on those slim and few passages that say seven goats or what have you for your daughter.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody I know has goats anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like we need to move on.
Agree. Yes, we do. Absolutely.
So, given that this show is about change and transformation, I'm very curious if you've noticed any shifts in the Anglican Church with the onset of technology.
Yeah, I have. I've noticed some significant changes. I mean, there's all the stuff we know about to do with video conferencing and so on, but I think the big change has been the capacity to record services, to stream them live, or to stream them later on Facebook or wherever.
Do you do that?
Yeah, we do. Some of the parish churches do, and in somewhat ironically, it was COVID that really supercharged that because it was hard to get to church at times, and
Right.
elderly people were particularly feeling vulnerable.
Sure.
So
So mass for shut-ins. You don't
yeah,
call it mass,
yeah,
right?
yeah, but yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah,
we,
because
we sometimes call it mass, yeah.
you do call it mass.
Well, yeah, I come from the sort of Catholic wing of the Anglican Church, so we kind of grab a few of those Catholic terms like mass.
You do confession. You do all the sacraments.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, we do. So that's the interesting thing about being sort of the Catholic end of the Anglican Church is that the sacraments are really important, including confession. Yes.
Am I wrong? Is Henry VIII who started the Anglican, right, for the
Yeah.
divorce and the Anne Boleyn stuff? Okay,
Yeah.
so when you say the end of Anglican Church that's close to Catholicism, would that sort of equate to the first steps that he took, and it just included a
Mm.
little leeway in the marriage stuff, but kept everything else because it was nice?
Yeah, that's basically right. Yes. So the
No,
church
Hank.
the church where my father was the parish priest before he became a bishop, which is here in Adelaide, St George's, Goodwood. They have incense and they have statues of Mary, and yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and the confession is offered each week for those who want it, and so yeah, it's quite an interesting. And there are a few if in Melbourne where you are, St Peter's Eastern Hill has a similar tradition, and
Well, and it's called St. Peter's.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of like, yeah, that's why when you first told me the name of your school,
yeah,
and I knew it wasn't Catholic. I was, a little head tilt there. So, and then how else do you leverage technology in your work? Like, for instance, the guided meditations that are available on YouTube are fantastic to help
yes,
people. And I'm wondering, what else? I mean, because the children that you're teaching are, you got to wrestle their devices off of them, I
yeah,
would think.
yeah,
So
we
I'm
do.
curious about how that's all working together.
Yeah, well, we have screens in my chapel here, so I will quite often use. I love using photographs to prompt responses, occasionally videos. But
In the service.
yeah, I do. So I have occasionally I'll use a video, and we have a reasonable sound system as well. But I love using photos because you can have that as a backdrop while you talk about whatever, and it's just sometimes those simple things, technology can be really really helpful. I haven't
You
yet
do
gone down
that.
the path of Chat GPT writing my sermons. I haven't gone down that path yet,
Please don't go down that path.
but
We can tell. We can
yeah,
tell when
you can
it's been
tell.
employed. Yes, yes. But I
Actually,
love that you're putting it more. I mean, it's a fine line though, isn't it, Theo?
yeah,
To becoming one of those guys with a house that's as big as my neighborhood with the television screen.
yes,
But I'm sure you're nothing like that. And I mean, I use visuals all the time. You can't have a meeting without something on the screen for everyone to stare at. In fact, total segue, if you don't mind, this woman that I was in a meeting with a few months ago, she came to the meeting and she was aware of this necessity that people need to have something on the screen that we can all look at. And
yes.
she'd shown up with basically a slide that had a line across the top and two lines dividing it into three columns. And she had titled the three columns, and that
That
was
was it.
it. It was the worst. And it sufficed. No one said, "What is this?" or anything. But if she hadn't had that, there would have been a problem.
Yeah,
So I get you. The image is very important.
yes, yes,
So how well attended are the services now that you've, ramped it up and
yeah.
you're a little bit slick? Do you have a full house?
Well, the interesting thing about working in an independent school is we just say, look, you have to come, so that it's compulsory. Um, but that
Wednesday. What about Sunday?
yeah, well, there's yeah, Sunday's optional, so that's the real struggle. But at the school, I have a captive audience, but that actually increases the challenge because I think, well, if I've got them there, I need to be interesting and I need to engage them, and even if they're not there for any belief reason, they have to come and get something out of it. So that increases my challenge really. Yeah.
I like that. Do you touch on difficult things that teens are faced with or that you perceive they may be faced with, like vaping?
Yeah, I don't personally do vaping, but we do have an old scholar who's a professor of heart lungs health here in Adelaide, and he's a relatively young guy, so he comes in and does the vaping talk and scares us all, which is
Excellent.
great. But I do touch on other things. I've talked about equality for LGBTIQ plus people. I've talked quite a bit about respectful relationships with women, and that's quite a focus here because we're an all boys school. So
Mm.
one advantage is that we can actually talk about it, and it's just the boys present, so that it allows us to say things without them feeling embarrassed because the girls are listening or whatever. So
It is good. And also, a little bit makes me sad that we need to
yeah,
have the separation in order to have a transparent conversation about
mm,
reality.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Especially when it comes to the realities of what happens to females, because it is so very different
mm,
to what happens for males.
mm.
And this mystery is not helping anyone.
Yes, I agree
Um,
completely. We try and have some co-ed days for that very reason, where we talk about the relationships together
we
as
have a
well.
sister school.
Yeah, we have a couple that we meet with periodically, and I think that's important. Yeah, yeah,
Indeed, they have dances. Are there still dances? Do people
yeah.
still
There's
do
two
that?
dancers. In fact, we've got our big year 11 and 12 social coming up at the end of this term, so that's always a big event. We have to. That's when we
Lovely.
crank down on the drinking and the vaping.
Oh, it's still such a pull, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's unfortunate. So we started with my game, which I find helps people through humor express gratitude for all the blessings that they have in their life. Because when you start talking about what's annoying you, my air conditioning isn't working, something along those lines, you can start saying, well, normally I have a really cushy life. And I know I have a direct impact, or there's a direct impact on my ability to maintain balance and peace when I function from a place of gratitude. So, because it gives us a chance to identify that existing abundance in life, right? And
Yes.
and that kind of opens the pipe wider. If you're focused on abundance, then more abundance comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you agree?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do agree. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of another sort of, I don't think it's a first world problem, which is why I didn't include it in that piece, because children are teens worldwide. And I'm wondering how can you help teens, or how do you help teens see and feel and appreciate the abundance, the bounty that is already theirs? I mean, adults too, but
Yeah.
specifically the teens.
Yeah, I've tended to focus on the word noticing, or awareness is the other word, but specifically noticing what's lovely and beautiful. And we actually in our school prayer we had some lovely words, and the word lovely is one of them. And we have a phrase as part of the prayer, strong and lovely, and that's a beautiful thing for men, especially to find that balance or to hold the two together. But I focus on them noticing what's beautiful and lovely around them. The fact that we live in arguably Australia's most beautiful school helps. So we have these wonderful old sandstone buildings and expensive grounds, and we're not that far from the CBD. So it's sort of this island of paradise but quite close to the CBD, so you can get in there if you need to. And so I kind of concentrate on that as a starting point.
Nature.
Yeah, and nature then more generally. Yeah. Even things we have quite a expansive bird life here because there's so many trees in the school. So we have, my favorite bird, the magpie, but we also have these sulfur-crested cockatoos and all sorts of
Not your favorite bird.
it's one of them because he and she have got everything. They've got the good looks and they can sing. So
But they come and they peck people on the head a
yeah,
lot. They're very aggressive in the springtime. It's
they
frightening. My son, when he was like 4, was being chased around the park because he had a shiny helmet on his, for riding his bike.
they do that, but if you get to know them, they don't. So we have a family who live on site, a whole tribe of them, and they've never attacked me because they know me. So I'm kind of one of their clan. So
Oh,
you got to
okay.
get to know them.
So you're saying I wasn't networking well enough with those
Yeah,
birds, and
yeah, you
that's
got
why
to
they were
keep
chasing
letting
my
them
son. Okay, all right,
know.
I'm with you. So, oh, and you bring up the awareness, and I love when people talk about awareness because in change management, the first step to introducing a proposed change to an environment demands that people are aware, right? We have
Yes,
to tell them what's planned.
yes.
And a lot of times you're not allowed to, which makes things fun. But it isn't only true in the world of work, right?
Mm.
We've all heard that the first step to recovery is being aware of the problem,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, how do you raise awareness of I guess maybe is it transcendence or of one's connection to the whole? How do you enable that connection for your congregation, especially the young ones?
The biggest thing I have with the younger ones is storytelling, and I've had feedback from the staff that they who say the boys love it when you tell a story. If it's a personal story, even better. Um, and so that's what they connect with. So if I can link in a personal story about transcendence, or just even noticing beauty,
Hmm.
that, that links, that connects. And
Besides the magpies, have you got one for us today?
yeah, well, it's actually another bird, but there was
That's
this.
fine.
We also have a few crows that live on site. Now they're not a particularly attractive bird, and they can't sing, so they're definitely down the pecking order in terms of beautiful birds. But they are intelligent, and so I had one of them sitting on this trestle table out near the oval, and I had my lunch, and it was quite bold. It was up there, so I kind of gradually fed it bits and pieces and took a photo. So I showed that in chapel. But I don't know if it's the same bird. But one if another crow was it was standing next to the downpipe, which had some water flowing out of it, and then it had something in its foot, like it would look like a piece of stale bread, and was just putting it into the water to kind of soften it up, and then eating it. And it was just like extraordinary. So a level of
Because you
intelligence
don't
that,
have raccoons here.
yeah, we don't have raccoons, no, so they're supposed to be smart, aren't they? Yeah.
They wash their food before they eat it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, everything.
Goodness me,
Because
I
they
didn't
have
know
to
that.
go somewhere and wash it first.
Before they eat it. Wow.
Yeah.
So those
So
are
there you go.
those are the
Well, so I guess your point there was that it's kind of sweet that the bird's washing its food or getting it soluble.
yes. And so we need to notice these things because they happen all around us all the time, but we get so caught up in our busyness that we forget to see them.
Really, your point there is about having presence,
Yeah.
being in the present, being now, because that's all we have instead of, oh, I should have done that, or oh, I'm going to need to do that in the
Yeah.
future. Being present. And do you get a sensation physically when you know you're super present, examining a leaf? Do you have a physical sensation?
Yes, sometimes I do. And sometimes I think, oh, I'm in one of these moments right now. Um, yeah, and that's such a wonderful experience. And something you said when we were preparing for today made me think too about letting go of, I think it was letting go of guilt or something like that. It's so when you think about the past, forgiveness is connected. Where you forgive it and then you let it go, and it's so important. Yeah.
It is. I mean, and there are rituals in other, what's the word I'm looking for? Other frameworks, right? There's different rituals. Incense burning can be
Yes.
one, of course, for
Yes.
letting go because it's in the smoke.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, are there any rituals about release
Yeah.
and letting go after your forgiveness? So what kind of rituals does the Anglican Church practice around that?
Yeah. We have a few. Forgiveness through confession is definitely one of them. The one that I've used occasionally, which I found very helpful, is if you write down on a piece of paper something that you just really need to let go, or someone you need to forgive, maybe. And it sounds dramatic, but it's actually quite effective. Is then you burn it, and so
Mm.
it's it's gone. It's out of there.
And I think you're supposed to take those ashes and let them into the wind as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they blow away. Yeah,
Yeah. And this visual of that is super helpful as
Mm.
well. The visual of them flying away, I think, can be very
Yes.
helpful. So burning, it's that's ubiquitous. That's across many different areas, right? Getting rid
Yeah,
of
it
things in
is.
smoke.
Yeah, it is. It's quite a, yeah, crosses all sorts of cultural and religious boundaries. The other one I've found helpful is very equally simple. I've done this on Good Friday where you might have a simple cross or maybe a picture even of Jesus, like an icon or something. And then
Mhm.
you symbolically place or mentally place like something like a, you can even do it with just a stone or something. So the burden that you're carrying, you put it at the foot of the cross and you let it go.
That
So it,
requires belief in a certain structure.
yeah, although I guess you could do it even just without the belief. You just symbolically place the stone down and say, okay, that's gone.
At a root of a tree, perhaps, or something. Yes,
Indeed.
I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Theo, this has been so much fun. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you feel might be beneficial to, let's say, any teen who might have tuned in, any
Yeah.
parents of teens? Yeah, I think I'll leave it there because that is, with the spiritual guidance for probably parents of teens, I think that would be great.
I think the last thing I would say is that there's an Indian poet, Tagore, is his name, who talks about the vitality that flows through every part of life. He's written some beautiful things that talk about this vitality in the world, and if we can become more aware of that vitality, which is, I guess, another word for transcendence, that teenagers can link to that, I think. I remember my son coming home and telling me about this experience he had just on the beach, looking up at the stars and feeling a sense of beauty and awe. Uh,
That's beautiful.
yeah, I think if we can connect with that, it might mean something. Yeah.
Any tips on how to connect with that?
Yeah. Nature is the tip. Nature.
I agree. And with that, I think I might go and have a walk in nature before the rain comes because it's Melbourne and it's going to
Yep.
come.
It's going to come. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe you'll be here soon and we'll get to meet in real life. And that would
I'd like
be really good.
Yeah, I was always looking to come over to see because one of my sons lives there now, and my sister, of course. So yeah,
Oh, yes, your sister, of course.
yeah,
I really appreciate your time. It's been lovely, and you've made the church, the school grounds sound so beautiful. I might just go and visit
yeah.
you.
Yeah, do come over. And Adelaide's always great for a visit. It's an underrated city. It's lovely.
Christmas, you guys really pull out all the stops.
Yeah, we yes.
You do. It's great. Thanks so much. I hope you have a beautiful afternoon, and we'll see one another soon.
Sounds great, Elizabeth. Okay.
Thank you.